Imagine you're walking down the street, but then all of a sudden you're being followed. You start to run. You look back to try and determine who is following you. Then all of a sudden, BAM! The purpose of my presentation today is to explain how perception may have affected the outcome of the Trayvon Martin shooting. My credibility on this topic is from two sources: spending many weeks in a class learning about perception and the perception process, as well as research I conducted on the event and about perception. All the information of the event came from the CNN library. Over the next several minutes, I will share with you the following main ideas: the background information of the Trayvon Martin shooting, a definition of perception from Google and my own understanding, an explanation for how perception affected Trayvon Martin in this situation, and how the shooter, George Zimmerman, perceived him. Okay, so I asked the audience a couple questions. I asked them what they would know about the Trayvon Martin shooting and when it happened. I had 3 responders, none of which knew the exact details of the case. They just knew a brief, a black man was shot by a Hispanic. They didn't really know any details or anything like that. So, of course, my next question was, do you think perception had affected what happened in these events? All the people didn't know if it had affected it just because they didn't know enough details about the event. Therefore, I think we should start out with some information regarding the specifics that took place on the event of the Trayvon Martin shooting. All this information also came from the CNN library, besides a 911 call I'm going to use to show you from YouTube, and I found a map picture of the area on wikipedia.org. Okay, so the details. It happened on February 26, 2012, between 7 and 8 p.m., as Martin, a 17-year-old boy, was walking home from a 7-Eleven in Sanford, Florida. Sanford was not Martin's home, but after being suspended for the third time, his mother sent him to live with his father, and then he would not be able to spend the suspension with his friends. So now I'll grab the map here so you can take a look at what the gated community that his dad lived in looked like. So as you can see up here, that's the north gate. This is where he entered coming home from a 7-Eleven, where you just wanted to go get a snack to go home. Down here is where his dad lived. Right here is where the shooter, a 28-year-old neighborhood watch volunteer, had his truck parked. When Trayvon Martin was entering this corner here, that's when Zimmerman decided to call the cops about a suspicious person. Now I'll play the video for you on my phone so you can hear about 20 seconds of what the call consisted of.
This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something. It's raining and he's just walking around looking about. Okay, and this guy, is he white, black, or Hispanic? He looks black. Did you see what he was wearing? Yeah, a dark hoodie, like a gray hoodie, and...
Okay, so that's the part of the phone call. So if we go back here, you can see that during that event was when Martin was passing Zimmerman right here. Now, he obviously spooked Trayvon Martin because Martin decided to start running towards home, taking this shortcut back here in this back road. And that was when Zimmerman told the dispatcher, oh, he is running, and decided to follow him. The dispatcher then said, we do not need you to do that, very specifically. Zimmerman then said okay, however, we do know he continued to pursue Martin. And this is where the shooting had taken place. The confrontation between Zimmerman and Martin happened, and a lot of information is unknown at this point. However, we do know that Martin was shot once, and he was then pronounced dead at the scene. Now that you know some of the details of the day, let's take a look at the definition of perception and the perception process and how that led up to the death of Trayvon Martin. Okay, so Google defines perception as a way of regarding, understanding, or interpreting something and a mental impression. My definition for perception is a way a person understands or interprets something. At this point, I'd like to discuss the most critical element of my speech, how those involved in this event were affected by perception and the perception process. The selection process contains internal and external factors. External factors help shape what we notice about others, like something loud or bright or something that stands out. In this case, it was dark out, and Martin was wearing a dark hoodie. Internal factors can be things like our motives or our emotions, which in this case, Zimmerman was on the neighborhood watch and had made 911 calls previous. None of those led to arrests, so he had emotions feeling that he wanted to chase Martin to make sure an arrest was made. The next step is organization. This is arranging the external factors so that it makes sense. Zimmerman saw a man at night with a hood, and it was raining. In this situation, he was thinking that since he was wearing a hood and he was a younger black male, he may have been up to no good, as he stated in the 911 call. The last step is interpretation. Once we have selected and organized our perceptions, we interpret them in a way that makes some sort of sense. What Zimmerman did in this case was take all of the factors into consideration and thought that he should follow Martin to make sure he was going to be arrested, since Martin was said to be up to no good. All the perception information was gathered at boundless.com. If you listened carefully today, you should have learned that the Trayvon Martin shooting was greatly affected by perception. The main ideas that were shared with you today include the details of the event, a definition of the perception, and a definition of perception process, and how I feel these terms are related to the event. Now I think we should all take a moment and look at when we see someone that we may not know and we think maybe he's a loser or a thug. Is that something you can really tell, or is that just your perception?